Now to what's happening in our country tonight. Last week, we interviewed a longtime partner at the consulting firm McKinsey & Company called Peter Walker. Like so many in finance and consulting, Walker spent an awful lot of his career doing business in China. We have no idea how much money he made doing that. We do know that along the way, Walker internalized a lot of the attitudes of China's totalitarian government. During our interview, we asked Walker what he thought of China's lockdowns. Here's what he said. Now, credible reports suggest that Chinese authorities locked people in their apartments and left them to die. We know they snatched people off the street and threw them into police vans. God knows where they went. That's the quarantine that you think they deserve high praise for. Why?
Well, I think, Tucker, if you just look at the results, okay, so I know there's always going to be questions about exactly what the numbers are, but I think the harsh action that they took, given the scale of China and the number of big cities in it, was exactly what they needed to do to be able to prevent the outbreak from going any further. And the reality is the outbreak hasn't gone much beyond Wuhan.
So the secret police kidnapping citizens off the street, authorities locking people in their apartments from the outside until they starved. Just look at the results. All of that, Walker said, was, quote, exactly what they needed to do. This is the view of one of America's most prominent business leaders. He did not seem ashamed to say it. In fact, later in our interview, Walker suggested that American authorities could have done the same things in New York if only they'd gotten an earlier start. Kind of a shame they didn't. Your jaw dropped watching it. But here's the striking thing. Nobody seemed to notice that he said it. Walker didn't find himself on the front page of the New York Times the next morning. No one in American business denounced him. He went home to bed, and that was it. Totalitarianism does not shock us anymore. Maybe that's because all of a sudden, it's all around us. You may have seen this tape already. If not, you've likely seen many more like it in the past few weeks. Two armed officers arrive at a family's home in Wisconsin. Someone has reported the mother to police for arranging a play date for her daughter. That's now a crime. Here's what happened next.
Are you aware that we're in a stay-at-home order right now?
Yeah, obviously.
By the government?
Yes, I am aware.
Okay, you're aware of that?
I am aware.
So I don't need to explain that to you?
Why are you here?
Because your daughter is going to play at other people's home and you're allowing it to happen. Stop having your kid go by other people's home.
Are we done here?
No, we're not.
Okay.
Your middle initial and your last name.
I'm not giving it to you. I haven't done anything wrong.
Okay.
I already
Perfect.
got it.
We got it.
Yes.
Okay.
And that'll be documented too, that you're uncooperative.
You were uncooperative. That will be documented. Notice the tone they strike with this mother. They are standing on her property, uninvited, hectoring her about the so-called crime of allowing her daughter to play outside the house. They're not apologizing for this. They're not embarrassed to be carrying out an order that has no basis in science. They are utterly self-confident. They treat her with pure contempt like a peasant. And later, the Calumet County Sheriff's Department posted an account of what happened on their Facebook page. In it, they refer to that mother's mobile home 6 times. Just, she lives in a mobile home. Oh, just a prole, just a peasant. Shut up and obey. Who cares what she thinks? They believe they have the right to do that. The question is, where exactly do they get that right? That's a good question. It's a question that we are strongly discouraged from asking. The short answer is governors told them they could. Never in American history have politicians been more powerful than they are now. Effectively, they are gods. In the state of Maine, for example, Governor Janet Mills now has the power to suspend any law she doesn't like. She can seize any state resource she feels like seizing. She can force any citizen or all citizens from their home. She can do all of this for as long as she wants, as long as she believes Maine is in a state of emergency. In fact, there's virtually nothing that Janet Mills can't now do. Many governors now have these powers. J.B. Pritzker is the governor of Illinois. On Monday, Pritzker did his best to explain why his word is now law in the state. It has to be law, he explained. Otherwise, thousands would die.
The stay-at-home order has prevented tens of thousands of illnesses and thousands of deaths. History will remember those who put politics aside to come together to keep people safe. It will also remember those who so blindly devoted to ideology and the pursuit of personal celebrity that they made an enemy of science and of reason.
In 3 sentences, Governor Pritzker framed himself as a leader of historic stature. Those who doubt his decrees are, quote, enemies of science and reason, enemies of civilization itself, enemies of the state. 2 days later, on Wednesday, this Wednesday, it emerged that Pritzker's own wife, who has her own state employees, was one of these people. His wife apparently had violated the lockdown herself. Governor Pritzker was asked about this. Here's how he responded.
What is your response to people who say the stay-at-home order and non-essential travel bans aren't being abided by your family? I believe there's a report from Illinois Rising Action that says that she recently traveled to Florida.
Well, first of all, I want to say that in politics, it used to be that we kept our families out of it. You know, my official duties have nothing to do with my family. So I'm just not going to answer that question. It's inappropriate, and I find it reprehensible, honestly, that reporter wrote a story about it.
Yeah, how dare someone cover that? Asking about whether or not J.B. Pritzker's own family is obeying the order that your family is morally obligated to follow is, quote, inappropriate. Indeed, the governor says it is reprehensible. How dare you? It would be very useful in moments like this to have an independent media. News organizations exist to hold the powerful to account. Here we have the powerful acting with no accountability at all. And our news media, they are cheering it on, besotted fangirls. No abuse is too grotesque for them. No talking point is too stupid to repeat. Reporters will do whatever they are told. They are all in. MSNBC recently sent a camera crew to document one of the latest and most Orwellian developments in America's descent into Chinese-style social control, barking drones that harangue citizens from the air. MSNBC was delighted by it.
Please move away from each other and separate.
Elizabeth, New Jersey is now using drones to spread the life-saving message.
You are not immune to this virus.
Move away from each other, commands the state of New Jersey. Break it up! Your God-given right to free assembly has been suspended indefinitely. Back inside, proles, or you will face the consequences. MSNBC applauds this as if it's all completely normal. In fact, it is, they tell us, a life-saving message. Handmaidens to the corona security state. But to their credit, at least MSNBC put it on television. Most outlets don't even bother to cover stories like this. The other day, prosecutors in New Jersey charged 9 people for daring to participate in a Jewish wedding in their backyard. A few months ago, that would have made the news. For 250 years, Americans have enjoyed the unfettered right to practice their faith as they choose. Now they don't. It happened overnight. Last month, Christians across the country were legally prohibited from celebrating Easter in their own churches. The national media barely noted it. How exactly is this happening? Well, it turns out that's not clear. Strangely, not very many people have asked. Politicians have no right to do any of this. They cannot make it illegal for people to go to religious services. The Constitution of the United States expressly prohibits that. The words could not be clearer. The First Amendment explicitly prevents government from making any law that inhibits the exercise of religious faith. That's not a detail or a footnote. It is a cornerstone of our history and of our legal system. Millions of people, probably your ancestors, fled to this country from around the world precisely because our Bill of Rights gave them this guarantee. It's why this country was founded. And in a moment, it's gone. How? Where did politicians get the authority to do this? Because some elderly, power-drunk epidemiologist told them to do it? That's not how our system works. It can't work that way. Occasionally, you hear someone complain about this. Some lonely civil libertarian will fret that we may be on a slippery slope toward losing our rights. If only. We're already there. We've slid to the bottom of that slope. Our rights are gone. No one has explained how politicians are allowed to do this. Where's the authority come from? How can they override the Constitution? Nobody seems to care. They're too afraid. But if you think this moment is scary, consider what might come next. Now that we've ceded all authority in the country to our political leaders, what can't they do? What are the limits to their power? That's not a theoretical question. It's not an argument over philosophy or political theory. It is the most practical possible question. The answer will define where this country goes next. What can't politicians do in the name of public health? As it stands, politicians won't let people worship or work or go to school or see their aging parents. They place the nation under house arrest. That's happening today, right now. But let's say we all get more afraid. What then? What couldn't they start doing? Could they intern people? Seriously. You can dismiss the possibility of that if you like, but remember that just a few months ago, most of us would have dismissed as ludicrous the possibility that propaganda-spewing drones would be hovering above. Now we have them. So what's next? What can't they do? Let's draw a line at some point. We're joined now by Fox's senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano, a legitimate expert on the Bill of Rights. Judge, thanks so much for coming on. So I'm sorry to be fixated on this one question because I can't get it out of my mind. Is it possible in this country, under our system, the one we've lived under for 250 years, for a politician to say, I'm just not obeying the Constitution, explicit rights guaranteed there, and I'm going to take them away? How is that allowed?
Well, it will be allowed if the politician believes he can get away with it because the public accepts the illusion of safety rather than the idea of liberty, for which many of our wars have been fought and many of our forebears have died in order to preserve the liberties, which now have been taken away by these politicians because they think they know what's better for us than we know for ourselves. They're not interested in choice. They're not interested in the Bill of Rights. They're not interested in their oath to uphold the Bill of Rights. Tucker, the constitutional guarantees, free speech, free press, the right to assemble, the right to worship, are only as good as the human beings in whose hands we have reposed the Constitution for safekeeping.
That's right.
And the governors that you have referred to in Maine, in New Jersey, in Illinois, in California, have no regard for the Constitution because they have public sentiment behind them, because they've scared the daylight out of the public, and very few people, unlike the mayor, God bless him, he's willing to do this, are willing to stand up and say, enough.
Then may I ask a question? If our politicians have no regard for the Bill of Rights, upon which the country is founded, of course, then why should the rest of us have any regard for their orders? I mean, it's not their country. They don't own it. It's our country. So why are we obeying them if they're contravening our Bill of Rights?
We have no obligation to obey them. Governors don't write the law and don't assess punishments. Only legislatures do. Every single one of the 50 governors in this state, in this country, has written new laws and assessed new punishment utterly and totally without authority to do so. Even if the state legislatures of the states of which they're the governors had authorized them to do it, that legislation would be invalid because, as you have pointed out, it directly contravenes guarantees in the Bill of Rights. And every one of those governors, when they became governor, took an oath not only to their state law and their state constitutions, but to the federal constitution as well, which includes the Bill of Rights. They have forgotten it. They've looked the other way. They are just interested in telling people how to live because they can get away with it. It will take a determined minority, like the mayor of Newport Beach, like some of the people that you and I know, pushing hard to point out how they're violating what we have hired them to do, because the majority is willing to accept this nonsense and believes it's the law. I go into a supermarket to buy a newspaper. The sign says, it's the law. You can't come in here without a mask. I said to the owner, you can tell me I have to wear a mask because you own this business. And if you think my not wearing a mask will harm your business, you have the right to keep me out. But there is no law that says I have to wear the mask. There's just the governor's musings and whims. That's all it is.
I can't control myself. I've got to say shame on many of our religious leaders for following these illegitimate orders and taking the orders from the government. That's not what they should be doing, for sure. Judge Napolitano, great to see you tonight. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.